The Lake Erie Grape Discovery Center is the official visitor center for the New York State Lake Erie Concord Grape Belt Heritage Area. Supporting and promoting the grape industry, visit us and learn about grape growing history in the Lake Erie region. Shop for grapey gifts, taste local wine in a Concord vineyard. Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Funding is provided by a grant from New York State Senator Catherine M. Young, representing Western New York's 57th District with a local office in Olean. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. From the Access Channel 5 studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Channel 5. Continuing the traditions of Senior Report, we are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week, countywide, from 9 to 10 a.m. Join us by calling in live, emailing us, or checking out our social media. And now, from the Channel 5 studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
I'm over here, guys. Well, sorry about that. I don't control the cameras. I thought I was going to do a ventriloquist act here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels, and I guess we're getting ourselves coordinated here. Happy Saturday and happy soon-to-be fall. I don't know about you, but 46 degrees this morning up on the hill in Ripley. But you know, it's good sleeping weather. I really enjoy this. We were talking about it earlier before the show that, cool nights are kind of nice. Put on the fireplace and snuggle down, and in the morning it's a little cool, but then during the day it's nice. And so we kind of get the best of both worlds with the weather. Fall foliage is starting to take place. I don't know how it is at your place, but I see some reds and oranges popping up. And I know a lot of folks are looking forward to that time of the year. And we actually have relatives that are going to be coming up this way just for the full fall foliage. That's hard to say fast. Fall foliage, and if this is your first time, I say this all the time because I don't know who's watching, but I know that sometimes we have new viewers and things like that and new listeners. But if this is your first fall here in Chautauqua County, you're in for a treat. This is just a gorgeous place to be, and just so many things going on, and we'll get to that in a minute. Before I do that, I do want to say good afternoon to our listeners at WRFA 107.9, low power to the people. We're happy to be joining you on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. And then as well as all the folks in Jamestown and Fredonia and Dunkirk area, they'll be watching the show later on this week. And again, we are rebroadcast twice a day out of here in Mayville at 2 and 8 in the evening. And you always can catch us over on YouTube forever and ever and ever. And hopefully you are enjoying the topics that we bring to you each week. Also keep in mind that if you have a question for myself, an announcement, a question for my guest, or a follow-up question from the week before, maybe, whatever, give us a call at 753-5225. Don't be shy. Again, that's 753-52225. Those of you that are in Jamestown later in the week or listen to us on the radio can email us, and we'll do a follow-up response. We could email you the answer, or if you have an announcement you want to have for the following week, send it along. We'll get it on the air for you, okay, free of charge. This is the time of year that I try my hardest not to put the furnace on to the last day of September. Last year, I think I got to in the 20s or something like that, so that's my goal this year. I try to shut the furnace off May 1 and get to October 1, so far so good, but if the weather keeps dipping like it was, we'll see. Also, I don't know if you are inclined to go out to the fruit stands or out to the farmers markets that are all over the area here. You know, we're just busting open with good produce at my house. I've got pears. I brought a bunch in for the guys here at the studio. Plums are starting to really get nice and ripe and juicy. Apples, I think I have 10 on 6 trees. The bees, they got knocked out this year. I don't know how your apple trees are out your way, but not too good this year. So that's why you make applesauce and freeze it for the years that are on the low side. Oh boy, I know we're all watching the news these days, and poor Houston, we saw last week, in the time before that, got beat up really bad with the hurricane down there. And I've been tracking the Florida situation only because I'm sure that many of you are watching right now have friends or relatives, or maybe you've just returned from Florida, just in the nick of time. It's going to be a tough situation down there, and I know our hearts go out to many of them that are down there right now because they don't know what to do. I talked to my one son, Sean, and his battle plan was pack up the kids. They were going to leave first thing this morning, and they're going to go to Tampa. Well, guess what? The storm all shifted west to Tampa. So scratch that idea. Then their plan was to go to Georgia. Guess what? It's going right into Georgia. So the battle plan right now for many people is, now that it's shifted and it's going to be a little bit less category of a hurricane, I guess, they're going to try to hunker down and ride it out in certain circumstances. He doesn't live in Miami. He's more to the north, so they're hoping maybe that they can get through it all right. So again, thoughts, prayers, hopes, everything works out for many of those in Florida. But I wouldn't be surprised you're going to see a lot of Florida plates up this way here soon, because this hurricane is supposed to be affecting right up into Tennessee and Virginia, and that's just a stone's throw, really, when you think about it, from New York State. So after this month, New York State's looking a pretty good place to live. Yeah, we get snow, but it does melt, and you don't have to leave your house. So anyways, crazy times, but we'll all get through it, I'm sure. Today we have a great guest here with us. Michelle Henry's on board, and you got to see her right off the bat. Usually we keep that a secret to the last second, but we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, a topic I've never discussed publicly, at least on TV, and that's women's suffrage. So stay tuned to that. Before we do that, I have some things to share with you, like I do every week, about things that are going on around our community. And I know many times people say to me, wow, I didn't know that, and thanks for announcing that. We weren't aware that whatever the event was that was going on was happening, because some of these organizations don't have a lot of money to advertise, and so they depend on a lot of us guys to get the word out. Today's the day, guys. We've been talking about this for quite some time. This is one of my favorite events of the year, and this is called the Local Music Showcase. And it's going to be held today. Yep, there it is, September 9th. All right. What it is that a bunch of venues, restaurants, bars, clubs, Infinity, they host the evening from starting at 6 o'clock through the wee hours of the night in some cases, and the local bands. And we've got unbelievable talent in this county, in the, I should say, the broader region, because we do have people come in from Cattaraugus, I believe, and in Pennsylvania, come across the border to support the Infinity program, and they donate their time to this event. And what you do, what your part is, you pay $1 per person, you get a wristband, and you get to go to all the venues that I'm going to mention here in a second, and you can listen to country, you can hear jazz, acoustic rock, hard rock, just original music, all kinds of stuff, and you get to bounce around the city of Jamestown all evening listening to all kinds of music. So here are the various venues: Brazil, Forte, Infinity Arts Cafe, Jamestown Skate Products, the Labyrinth, Mojos, Shawbucks, the Pub, the Q, and the Wine Cellar. And Will and I, under our title Russell and Hamels, will be performing there at 8:15 to 9:15. And so we're really excited about playing there this evening. And they're going to be having music till 1 o'clock in the morning there. So in many cases, you got to be 21 to get in, all right? The Infinity, you can go there, all ages. The Labyrinth is all ages. Jamestown Skate Products is all ages. All the other ones are 21 and up, okay? Because they serve alcohol there. It goes to a great cause. If you don't know anything about Infinity, check them out on their website. You can always give them a call at 664-0991. I wrote over the number. And they have lots of good things going on there. In fact, there's one thing that I can share right now. They have something called a Learning Carnival, and that's my next slide. It says, come and explore and experience Excel at Infinity during this free open house event. All right, this is brand new. I haven't seen this before. Demo classes in art, music, dance, stage experience, and a lot more. They're going to have a photo booth with props for the whole family. That's always fun. Guided tours of Infinity's facilities there. They're on 2nd Street. Orientation registration for this coming year will be taking place, and this is sponsored by the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. Okay, and that's going to be held September 16th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., and it's free. Okay. All right, new student orientation. Let's see here, what does it say? Music, art, dance, and theater students of all ages are welcome to enroll in private and group lessons. The Infinity Visual and Performing Arts Center will hold 2 new student orientation and intake sessions in September, and that will be held on Wednesday, September 13th and Saturday, September 16th. If you're interested, contact the center at 664-0991 to register for your spot. Students may also go online at Infinity Performing Arts, that's all one word, .org, to be contacted for an orientation slot. Orientation slots last approximately 30 minutes, including a tour of the center and all of the various opportunities for lessons and the types of things they offer. You know, you might want to go in there, Justin, you might want to go in there for a trombone and find out that you really are a ukulele guy. Or you might find out that you're really interested in theater or dance rather than something else. So it's lots of fun, and it's a great opportunity to develop skills for young folks. Okay, the folks at Northern Chautauqua Community Foundation Grants and Scholarships, they want you to know the following, that there's a lot of stuff that is available for organizations to apply for, and in many cases people don't know it. The money sits and goes not wasted but unused that year. And so if you or your club or organization are interested, they have a grant writing workshop coming up on October 10th to learn more about how to write a grant. This is going to be held from 9 to 11 a.m. And the workshop is designed to arm nonprofits with the fundamentals of grant writing, and it's free to all nonprofits, charitable organizations, and municipalities wishing to submit grant proposals to funding sources. The Patterson Library is hosting this training in their Octagon Gallery in Westfield, right there on Portage Street. Professional grant writer Sherry Lance will lead the workshop, providing practical tips and strategies for writing each component of the grant application. Now you might say, what's the big deal with the grant applications? It's a little tricky. It's not terribly hard, but there's certain words that you can use, phrases, and there are certain parts of grants that you may not be familiar with, and they're very important, so she's going to help you understand all that. Registration is required as space is limited, and you can go to their website and check it out. Also, right along with the same group, the Silver Creek Irving Heritage Fund Committee is accepting grant applications until September 20th. This particular fund provides funding to new community initiatives, leadership development, and charitable programs that address the most pressing issues within the Silver Creek Irving community. All charitable organizations that serve the Silver Creek Irving community are eligible to apply for a grant. Applications are available at the Village of Silver Creek office and the Town of Hanover office. The Anderson Lee Library and or committee members. Also at the library. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I was going to tell you on that. And you always can check it out on their website at the Northern Chautauqua Community Foundation website. Okay? So these are things to know. A lot of times you don't hear about it. Okay, let's move along here. Know the signs of an overdose. We've been talking about this right along. Friends take care of friends. Know the signs of an overdose and call 911 immediately. You're protected by the Good Samaritan law. Save a life. So for more information, you can always contact CASIC at, let's see, 664-3608. It's down in the Jamestown area, and up in Dunkirk, 366-4623. And of course, that is the Chautauqua Alcohol and Substance Abuse Council. And you always can go to their website and learn more. But guys, this is your neighbor. It could be your own child, adult child or young child, I suppose. Check it out, because this stuff is cropping up everywhere, so you could save a life. Hey, let's go back to Jamestown, I guess. Annual Toys for Tots fundraiser is going to be held September 16th. Look at that. A holiday tradition will come earlier this year when Toys for Tots holds its annual kickoff fundraiser Saturday, the 16th. The 11th annual event will be held in the Willow Bay Theater, located at 21 East 3rd Street in Jamestown, beginning at 7 p.m. Again this year, the evening will feature a performance of the local comedy troupe, The Lights of Broadway Entertainment. Also will be entertainment will also be provided by the musical group TBT. You know, these are not as easy as you think to read, because of the way they're written sometimes. Though Christmas is still several months away, organizers of the Toys for Tots drive want to get an early start on raising money to meet the expected demand for toys. Each year, the toy drive provides gifts for, this is a staggering number, 2,400 children in Chautauqua County. That's a lot. This marks the 18th year that the Resource Center has coordinated the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve's Toys for Tots drive in Chautauqua County. This year's kickoff celebration is being billed as Music and Mayhem. For $25, you get admitted in to the show. Guests can enjoy appetizers and beer before the 8 p.m. showtime, as well as the elaborate dessert buffet during intermission. There will also be prize drawings featuring dozens of items donated by local businesses. Okay, to buy tickets or for more information about the kickoff celebration on this year's Toys for Tots drive, you can phone somebody named Brown, I don't know their first name, 661-1042, or you can stop off the Resource Center down on Dunham Avenue in Celeron from 8 to 5, or you can go to the Chautauqua County, New York's Toys for Tots 2017 Facebook page. All right, let's go. Oh, we're going to skip number 19, okay? Is there a poster for number 19? Let's pop that up for a minute. Okay, just pop it up. I won't read the whole thing because we're going to talk about it later. Okay? There's going to be an historical lecture on the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage set for September 23rd. I'm not going to tell you who these people are, but let's hang on to this, Jeff, because when we talk about it, you can pop that up later, okay? Sounds good. All right. And I learned a long time ago that it's not a historical, it's an historical. I got chided on that once because I wrote it wrong. Okay, let's go on to number 20. Sprout Film Festival. This is a new one. Sprout Film Festival, Friday, September 29th at the Reg Linnaeus Center for the Arts. Sponsored by the Resource Center. Admission is free. For more information, contact the Resource Center. So, looks like they're going to have some original films, perhaps. And it looks like a lot of fun. So that starts at 7:30 at the Reg. Okay, moving along. Step Up for Kids. All right, this is a 5K run, walk, and a kids hero run, September 30th. It's a Saturday at the Casadega Beach in Casadega. Registration starts at 9 a.m. It's a 5K, begins at 10 a.m. The kids hero run begins at 11:15 a.m. To register online, go to capjustice.org or give me a call at 338-9877. So we got a run, walk, and a heroes run and all kinds of good stuff there, and that's for Step Up for Kids for that program. Okay, we're going to take a breather. We're going to be right back, and stay tuned.
Your daughter is having trouble learning French. Do you A, hire a tutor,
Bonjour.
B, enforce a French-only rule at home, or C, watch some foreign films? When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers, but that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Okay, today's topic is women's suffrage. I remember looking this up a little bit, and I was telling my guests that I can't even imagine what it would be like where we would have a group of people that couldn't vote, that were our spouses, our children, our mothers, whatever role, and that's the way it was. And we're going to talk about that topic today. So I want to welcome back to the show Michelle Henry, who's our county historian, and all kinds of other titles I know that you can add as you go along. And last time you were here, we talked a little bit about archiving and conserving our own records and all that. And I was telling you that I'm in the throes of that right now with my own family. Both my parents are now deceased, and I'm going through their cabinets and things like that. And I'm finding pictures, and lo and behold, Mom had written on the back of those photos, you know, Cousin Joe, Aunt Mary, whatever. And so now,
Wonderful.
now I'm the guy that's in charge. My brother doesn't know quite as much because he wasn't always interested in the family history. So I'm sort of like another family historian, I guess.
You're so lucky that she wrote those names on.
Yeah. And I take it as an honor and as a responsibility to carry on, you know, the tradition of our family line, and so that when my kids will sometimes say, you know, why do I have this feature, or why do I have this color hair, I can say, well, look, here's your great-great-great-grandmother. You look exactly like it. In fact, it was funny. I looked at one picture of my mom, and I kind of did, you know, like covered up her hair and all that, and it looked exactly like my daughter at the same age. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So kind of
You know,
cool.
so many of our local historical societies have photographs in their collections, and they don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And even if they're from a local photographer, you know, you just don't know who the folks are. And you know, the more time that goes by, the less and less likely it is that you'll ever figure it out.
Right.
So I always encourage people to, you know, if you have any photos that you haven't written the information on, just do it. Just
You know, I think I'm remembering this right. Didn't the Post Journal used to have like the mystery photo every week?
Yeah.
Because people didn't know what was this picture. Oh, you know, a bunch of people at a steelworks factory or furniture, whatever, and
Yeah.
you know, that would have been. It's almost criminal that people don't know,
right.
because there's such cool history in this area.
And it's nice because sometimes when the paper did that, you know, someone would say, oh, you know, I think my father worked there, or, you know, and they would find a copy of that in their own possession that might have had names on it or whatever. So sometimes that's a really good way to get some folks identified. Even if you can't identify everyone, you can maybe pinpoint the year. So yeah, that's always a nice thing. And I know at some of our local festivals, they'll put out photos and ask people to help identify them. So I guess you never know where you might find some information. But you know, like I said, the more time passes, the harder it is.
Well, and I think I may have mentioned this last time you were on. You know, I've got photos of all my relatives except for one, and that was my own grandfather. I have no idea what my grandfather, Hamels, looks like. He came from Belgium. He married my grandmother, who was from Ireland. They evidently had a falling out. They split up. She must have burned all of his pictures, and to this day, I have no idea what he looks like. I have his naturalization papers. He was a short guy. I know his color of hair, his color of his eyes, and I know where he's buried, but I don't know what he looks like. So that's kind of horrible.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. And you know, sometimes if folks are putting more and more family history on different websites.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can find a picture of your own ancestor, and the person who's posted it you've never heard of. So there are people who may have been distantly related to you and somehow ended up with the family photos.
Right.
Because when families were large, you know, who did get all the family old photos? You know, usually there's one person in the family who was either more interested or the oldest. And then as generations go by, how does that get filtered down? So I found a picture of one of my great-great-great-grandparents online. No idea who the person was, but obviously had a connection somehow.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know how it is for you, but you know, when you go to the records, you'll find like 3 pictures of your grandparents. That's all they have left. 3 pictures. Now we have boxes boxes and drawers. It's like, I think we're like photo crazy. It's incredible how much stuff we have.
Right. The sensibilities changed. My grandparents didn't have a photographer at their wedding. My grandmother said, "Oh, it just didn't seem important," you know.
Who cares? We can't afford that.
Right. Now, can you imagine somebody now having a wedding and not having a photographer
gosh, no.
there, or multiple
Right.
photos?
And with the digital world and iPhones, I mean, we're photobombing each other, so it's a different world for sure.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about women's suffrage. And that is such a strange word. I keep saying it to myself, and it's what a horrible word. It sounds like they're in agony. Suffrage. What's the root of that word? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. I mean, I think it's English. You know, the suffragettes were,
Right.
and I guess that's the term they use in England. We don't use suffragettes here. We use suffragists. But anyway, what's incredible to me about it is how long it took the fight to get equal rights to vote. It's amazing to me that most of the women who started that did not live to see women actually get the vote. And it's just really, with the perspective we have now, it just seems hard to believe. They started in 1854.
1854?
1854.
Where?
And actually, I mean, it might have even been a little bit before that, but for us in Chautauqua County, the first women's rights convention was held in December of 1854. Susan B. Anthony came here and had a convention at the courthouse.
Here in Chautauqua County?
On December 26th, so the day after Christmas, she traveled here.
1854.
Right, and so actually, like in Seneca Falls, where they got their start, was more like 1848. But they were trying really hard to get property rights for women, because at that time period, a woman did not have property rights, and that had a lot of implications. A woman couldn't be the guardian of her own children if her husband passed away. So a male relative had to be appointed to make financial decisions for your own children.
I suppose if it was an elderly woman and her husband passed away, her house would go to one of her kids.
There was something called dower rights, and so a woman was allowed a percentage of her husband's estate. And often they tried to make, if it was divided up and she got 30%, they tried to make sure that that included the house for her sake, so she had somewhere to live after her husband passed away. But, I've seen some estate records where a woman actually had to go to her husband's estate sale and bid on her kitchen appliances. Like I saw one where a woman had to pay 35 cents for a cast iron skillet. That she probably used her entire life, but it wasn't something she could claim as part of her dower rights.
Isn't that crazy?
I know, it seems hard to believe now. It also seems hard to believe that you couldn't make decisions for your own children. But so these, the women in Seneca Falls, they had been working really hard to get rights for slaves. They were trying to abolish slavery and get some equal rights for the population that they were trying to help, and kind of realized in that process that they were fighting for rights that they didn't even have.
So the context of the story is pre-Civil War,
right?
And so you've got this whole melding pot of rights for others and so forth.
Right.
Where did that come from? Do you know? I mean, here in America, anyways, was this coming in from Europe? I mean, a lot of times we find that these trends are coming across the ocean. I know that.
Well, I think a lot of it was based in religious movements. There were some new religious movements at that time. We're called the Burned Over District. There were a lot of new ideas and some free thinking coming through.
Did you just say the Burned Over?
Yeah, Western New York is called the Burned Over District.
I have never heard that.
Oh, yeah.
Burned Over District.
The Burned Over District.
Sounds like toast.
Yeah, and it was because there were a lot of new, religions like Methodism, and spiritualism, and the Mormons. And as those movements spread west, a lot of them came through here because we're on such a major migration.
Right, we talked about that last time.
And so they'd have, these tent meetings, and people would get all fired up. And so they talked about the fact that so many different movements had come through here that the area was burned over from the.
That's an interesting term.
Yeah. So a lot of new ideas and new thinking, and like the spiritualists were all very much about equal rights. for everyone, women, and So, and it fit in also with the abolitionist movement. People, thinking that slavery needed to be abolished. There were a lot of people, which this is kind of off subject, but a lot of people in New York State who were really involved in the efforts to not allow Texas to be admitted as a state into the Union. And you think, why? Why did people here care? But Texas was such a huge territory, they were afraid that it would be admitted as a slave state and then divide into 6 smaller states, and then there'd be more slave states in the Union than free states.
And the crazy thing is, Texas is still trying to leave.
That's right.
Every time I go to Texas, they got these guys, we want to succeed from the Union.
So we see in the 1840s, all of these communities in Chautauqua County sending resolutions and petitions to Congress asking that Texas not be allowed to be admitted as a free state.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there were a lot of people getting very interested in social movements. And at the same, and a lot of these women, were involved in it. A lot of them started out as, working for the abolition movement and helping escape slaves. And then, realizing that they had very few protections under the law, and they felt that one way to improve that situation was to be given the right to vote. So they tied in, the ability to make decisions for your own property, your children would be improved if they could vote. And it's kind of a radical idea, in the 1840s. And so they were able to get some legislation passed that would improve their property rights so that they weren't just subjected to the dower laws. So some of those were changed. And Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton had, written some petitions. They had gone to Washington. Susan B. Anthony apparently was the one who went out and spoke. Elizabeth Cady Stanton did a lot of the writing. But so they decided that Susan should start a campaign across New York State and go to every single county and try to get a local political equality club started. So on her way back from Washington, Chautauqua County was her first stop. So it was called the 1855 campaign, but it actually started here in December of 1854.
So how was it received politically in the area? I mean, were the men uprising and keeping their wives away from these meetings?
No, and a lot of the early supporters of women's rights were men. And so, and that's another thing that's interesting to me is we had a lot of support here. And I can't imagine traveling here in December, the day after Christmas, and she wrote in her diary, so we know about this from her diary as well as a couple other sources, that it was sort of warm and had rained, and so travel was horrible because, sleighing wasn't good. So normally at that time of year you'd be traveling by sleigh, and if there's lots of snow and drifts or, ice, you can travel pretty easily. But this had made the roads muddy. And so she said,
Gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. It'd be horse and sleigh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No trains really to speak of. So she was.
She was tough.
She was tough, and so she came. Bad weather conditions, travel was bad, but she said 9 towns were represented at this meeting at the courthouse, and they drafted some resolutions that they had passed. And after that, she went to Sherman, and apparently there was a very large crowd, very enthusiastic, that met her in Sherman. And so we had some progressive communities that you wouldn't think of nowadays, perhaps. Maybe you don't think of Sherman as being really
I do.
Do you? Okay.
I do. Well, no, and I'll tell you why. Because, as you know, I was a school superintendent, and Sherman has always been way ahead of the curve when it comes to education.
Oh. Well,
you wouldn't think that not because of anything other than the fact they're sort of landlocked and you can't get to it real easily. You have to kind of work your way to get to it. Clymer's the same way. But Sherman has been a blue ribbon school district in New York State for quite a long time. And I used to figure out, I'm right next door to them, and we're struggling, but they're a very strong community.
Well, so maybe, there's some historical thread there. Frederick Douglass came and spoke there when they were talking about, the anti-slavery movement. And then Susan B. Anthony, and she talks about how enthusiastic the crowd was. Yeah. And there were men who signed her petition and who actually were on her local committee. So there were men in the community who were, because obviously ultimately men had to vote to give women the right to vote.
So in these meetings, and they had these resolutions, were these resolutions to allow women to vote locally, or was this the bigger picture, or both?
Well, I think they decided because they had, made attempts to appeal in Washington without success, and so they decided they needed to do it at the local level. So the goal was to get every county in New York State, start with local politicians, local government, and then work up.
So when could women vote in Chautauqua County?
New York State passed legislation in 1917, so it was just a couple years before the federal amendment to the Constitution. But still, think about that. It took from 1854 when she first started that campaign to 1917.
Wow,
So
that's
it took a long time.
basically 150 some years. So if a woman showed up at the voting booth before all this, was it illegal for her to vote?
She could be arrested.
Get out!
No.
Jeez.
And so
Wow.
some women did that. Some women tried, just to make their point, and were turned away. Or if they were, if they did make a scene, they could be arrested. You asked me about. You asked me a question earlier, and I was going to get back to that regarding the.
Well, I'll let you think about that for a second, because I just got breaking news that suffrage means vote in French.
Okay.
So I just got
there
that
you
in
go.
my earpiece. Thank
There
you,
go.
Chris.
Okay. Good. So, I know what you're asking. The local newspapers carried the stories about these conventions
Sure.
and meetings that were being held. And, some papers were supportive, just like nowadays. And the Mayville paper was less enthusiastic. And so the Jamestown paper carried quite a bit about it, and that Jamestown played a really prominent role later in women's rights. We had the largest political equality club in the nation, Chautauqua County did. So a lot of really politically active men and women here.
I'm fascinated by this. I really
Yeah.
am.
In the
Because it's
nation.
like,
Yeah.
why didn't we know this?
I know.
We don't talk about this here in Chautauqua County. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, so the Mayville newspaper at the time says, we've been asked to announce that this meeting's going to be held at the
Yada,
courthouse.
yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada, yada.
And then the next day, or the next issue of the newspaper said, we've been asked to report on the outcome of the meeting, so here you go. So it was kind of like, yeah, well, we wouldn't
Kind of walking
normally
a
give
thin
this
line.
any.
We're not supporting it, but
right.
we also want you to know this.
But here you go, yeah. So she went from here to Cat County to Allegheny, and she really started this very systematic course across New York State. And they had a meeting and encouraged all the towns to send a representative to try to get. And they drafted these petitions that they then sent to Albany to get.
Okay, so Susan B. Anthony and this Elizabeth Cady Stanton, they're New Yorkers,
Right.
and they're active all over the place here. But Susan B. Anthony goes on bigger waters, right? I mean, does she go national?
Oh, well, sure, because really she became the face of the whole movement. They started in Seneca Falls, and that's where the Women's History, Hall of Fame is, and the Rights Museum. But ultimately, this became bigger than just New York State. They really took it everywhere, and there were other states. A lot of the, I don't say a lot of the states, several states in the western part of the country, when they became states, gave women the right to vote from the minute they were established. Wyoming and Colorado, and so we have some very interesting photographs from Lilydale that they had a women's convention every year, and Susan B. Anthony came, and they had a banner for every state that had given women the right to vote. And so you can see in the background a couple banners. One says Wyoming, and so they had women had the rights out there in the 1890s, which was quite a bit earlier then.
Okay, so let's go back to what we always say, root cause. So why were women not allowed to vote? I mean, what was the bottom line? It's got to go back hundreds of years or thousands of years or something.
Well, right. I mean, the sentiment, I guess, was just that women didn't have the physical strength or mental capacity, that their place was the...
Mental capacity?
Yeah, and, the arguments against giving women the right to vote at the time were from prominent physicians, psychologists, doctors who
Were they married and still lived?
who said, our society is based on women being the caretakers of the home and raising our children, and you cannot do that and also enter the male arena of politics, because politics are tough and dirty sometimes, and and you have to have fortitude that women are just not designed to have. So. I think back in those days there was a much more separation in women's professions. How many professions were available to women at that time?
Yeah.
Not very many outside occupations, because people didn't, our society didn't support that idea that women should be out in the workforce.
And it wasn't, we're looking backwards and saying, what? For
Right.
them, it was just everyday life. This is my
Right.
role, this is what I do. But
Right,
it's-
and there were some very vocal women who didn't want to be given the right to vote, because they said, I don't want that responsibility.
Don't put it on
So
me.
So there were also some women who were quite vocal and got a lot Publicity for saying, this isn't the right thing for us. So
Okay, we'll take a little breather. And folks, you're watching Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels. My guest today is Michelle Henry, our county historian, and we're talking about the women's suffrage movement in not only Chautauqua County, New York State, but across the country, and in some ways the world, because it's still going on, I guess, in some countries. So if you have a question or a comment, give us a call, 753-5225. All right. I looked up some statistics about women's voting in the last year. Okay, so I'm going to pose this just for a second, and I'm not going to give the answer yet. So people listening or watching, do you think women vote more than men or men more than women? And I'll get back to you on that answer in a minute. So what do you think?
I'm going to say women vote more than men.
Why do you think that?
Well, I don't know. It just seems that some of the issues that people are having to deal with lately have, kind of been broken into camps that might make women more inclined to vote now in the past.
Healthcare and things of this nature?
Yeah, just some of the the candidates. There's more women in the field, but I don't know. I don't know this. I don't know the answer. So my guess would be women, but
You are correct.
Oh, okay.
In the last national election, women outvoted men. I think it was like 4 or 5% more.
wow.
And that's telling. It's like, come on, guys, you've always had this right, use it. And women had to fight for goodness sakes, and and you're using it. But I mean, it's like, wowzer. I was surprised by that. I would have thought it was much closer, more equal. But wow. So hundreds of years ago, women were the property of men. They had the children. They were responsible for creating heirs. They were in charge of the kitchen or whatever, and they had their role. Life was good, according to men. But then that changed. So, it's very interesting, because I've done some work in education over the years in my research for my PhD. And back around the turn of the century of the 1800s, like 1812, 1814, and that, it was the age of enlightenment. And that's where people were beginning to look at themselves differently. They weren't a piece of property, but they were an individual. And that's where individualism comes into play. So I have a feeling that this, you mentioned the Mormons and religious groups and spiritual. So I think, again, you just can't take a snapshot and say this year in 19 whatever, or 15 or 18, it all happened that day. It was just this slow, gradual appreciation for individuality and humanism, and that we have minds, and that we're not property of others. I mean, you were talking about slaves, same idea, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's a fascinating topic. So, let's see where I was going to go with this. So in 1917, New York State, as a state, approved women's right to vote?
Right. So the states could give women the right, even though there wasn't a federal legislation for it. And so a lot of states were doing that. So, like I mentioned, Wyoming, Colorado were much earlier than us. New York State passed it in 1917, and that very next year we had female candidates for public office.
So in 1917, if I was a woman, I could go vote, But could I vote in national elections? Or was it just local? I mean, do you know?
Right, it was just state
State.
elections, right,
So they weren't there yet.
right.
So then what happened?
Well, there's some wonderful stories you can read online about how, the vote for the federal legislation came down to just one senator, and his mother called him at the last minute
I
and
saw
said,
that. Yes, I saw that
expect
on
you to
TV.
vote. Yeah. So, you should come to the program on the 23rd, because we're having this wonderful program. Two professors of history are going to come and speak about women's
Okay.
suffrage, and I hope that it comes up.
All right,
as
well, we're going to get to them in a minute. We have
Okay.
a phone call, all right?
Okay.
So Jeff, let's bring that picture up after the phone call, and we'll talk about that particular
Okay.
event. So, good morning, caller.
Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
It's great that Michelle is on the program talking about our wonderful history that we have in our area. It's just so fascinating.
Isn't it rich?
Much.
It's so
Oh,
rich here.
so rich.
I
So-
love when you come on, Michelle, or John Wolf, either one of you, when you talk about local history, it's like, what? I did not know that.
Yeah, it is. It is really fascinating. So, and thank you for your contribution. People should delve more into history because history repeats itself, too.
Yeah, I've noticed that lately. I won't go any farther.
I won't either. But,
So, what's going on these days?
Well, September is a very special month. It's designated as recognition for the value of the older worker. Hire the Older Worker Month. And
okay.
also the Office for the Aging has a Facebook page. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
I think you told me about it.
I actually created it.
Oh, you're the one that created it. Oh, you mentioned that. But, we're putting things on it now, and I just put something on. It was just posted yesterday.
See, there you go. You build it, and they will come. It's
Yes.
for those of you that are interested or listening.
Yeah.
If you go on Facebook and you want to do a little search, you could just put in Chautauqua County Office for the Aging, and it'll pop up, and like it, and you'll know all the events that are going on through that office. Right?
Right, and thank you for creating that for us.
You're very welcome.
That is terrific. It's so much fun.
Well, Mary Ann was on the show a while back, and I said, you need a Facebook page, and she says, we don't, have the horses to drive that project. I said, I'll do it for you. So through a few little jumps and hoops, we got it figured out with the county, because, we had to go through all the protocols and the permissions. And
yeah. There's all kinds of securities with the county.
Right. Well, that's okay. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But Josh and Christine and Mary Ann, they well, now y'all can do that, so it's great.
Yeah, it is terrific. Thank you for doing that. Well, I remember when you came over that day to the office, you stopped into
I
my office.
surprised her. Yeah,
too.
she's got a great office with a window.
Ah.
Everybody else looks at the parking lot. She's got the hills of Stockton, maybe. I don't even know what to
Yes.
look at.
Oh, I have a gorgeous view.
Yeah.
The only drawback is I can't open a window to escape.
Okay, so anything we should know about going on besides this? This is the month of the older worker.
Right, recognition of Hire the Older Worker.
Okay, so you got any jobs for the older workers?
Yes, we do have jobs. We have jobs with our program, and of course we're always working with people to help them find jobs in the private sector and other employers off the program. That is the purpose of the program, is to get them, into a setting with current work experience, and then they find something better.
Linda, you and I talk about this from time to time, but what is the age group that we're talking about here?
They must be at least 55
Okay,
and unemployed.
all right. And they should contact you, right?
They should contact me.
There's a number right there.
And we have computer training going on also at the Patterson Library in Westfield, and also the Ohio Library in Brockton.
Great.
Oh.
And that number is, for our listeners on WRFA?
It is 753-4471.
Okay, or go to Facebook.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, Linda, have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend and
Okay,
week.
thanks for
Thanks.
calling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so let's get right to your event that's coming up on the
23rd.
23rd.
23rd of September at the Bemis Point Methodist Church, which
Okay.
is a wonderful big facility. we're having two professors come who have done a lot of research on women's suffrage in Western New York and specifically in Chautauqua County.
All right, let's pop their pictures up here.
So those are Tracy Langworthy, who is a history professor at Jamestown Community College in the purple shirt, and Dr. Shannon Risk from Niagara University. So Dr. Risk is going to speak about Western New York and the women who were so involved, and we were really, very active in Western New York. Seems like we always seem to pull, ranks together and make a lot of things happen. And then Tracy will talk about the Political Equality Club in Chautauqua County and how it was so large, and women from Chautauqua County went to Washington, they marched, they got arrested. There were some women who really put themselves out there to make this happen on a federal level.
Okay.
So they're going to talk about that.
So let's get the times and dates again.
Okay, so it's Saturday, September 23rd at 10 a.m., and we should be done by noon. It's free, it's open to the public. We'll have coffee and light refreshments there for you. And we're also, just to kind of make it a little fun, we're going to have somebody there in a period costume portray an anti-suffragist, and we'll have an early suffragist there. So there were a lot of things written, like I said, from a scientific viewpoint to support the fact that women needed to stay in the home. And so we've put together some language that was published nationally. And Bob Terryberry from Bemis Point, who's wonderful.
My God.
I love Bob Terryberry. He's going to come and portray the person, one of the folks who was so vocal about not letting women vote. And then Kim Bentley from Fluvanna, who portrays Ophelia Griffith. And Ophelia Griffith was a woman from Fluvanna who was very active in the Political Equality Club. So he's going to give his argument, and then she'll have a little opportunity to give hers. It's just
I'm sitting here shaking my head because Bob and I are extremely good friends. I didn't know he was going to do that.
Yeah.
He will be beautiful in that role. He'll be excellent because he can be so nasty as an actor. No, he'll really dig in. He'll look down his nose at him and everything.
Well, he came
How
to my
funny.
office. Yeah, he came into my office and read for me his what he had prepared, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you're going to be booed." And he said, "Well,
He
I
will
hope
love-
so,"
he will
because
love
he
it.
said, "I'm prepared."
Oh,
so
gosh.
I think if you're there and you're in the audience and he says something that you object to, then feel free to.
Folks, if you don't know Bob Terryberry, Bob is not only a local author, but he also is a very well-known local actor, and he's been in lots of productions, and he's just a terrific guy, and he's my buddy. So
Well,
he'll
he's
be
really
fun.
involved in the Bemis Point Historical Society, and they're co-sponsoring this with the Chautauqua County Historical Society. So we're really trying hard to, get our programs out in different parts of the county. We try to go to different places to host meetings, and we partner with whatever local historical societies in the area. So it's a nice opportunity for members from both groups to get together, just network.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and I
yeah.
think that will really bring the history alive right then and there, because like I said, I know the intensity Bob can be at, and he'll make it come alive for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything that he's saying is not anything he made up. It was actual, arguments of the day, debating the value of giving women equal rights. So.
By trade, I'm a special education teacher, and I remember that women's rights got voting rights, and then Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves, and civil rights and so forth in the 60s, and all those things that were coming along. And then I remember the rights for folks with disabilities, that were based on all those pieces of legislation. So we continue, and we talk about the rights of same-sex marriages, and these are all based on all those things that go way, way back. So I mean, everything is based on equality, and why should it, and why can't we, and the arguments that are being made. So this is a fascinating step back in history.
And I think one of the things that people still talk about now is that we don't have a lot of women, especially locally, running for public office. And I think that's unfortunate that we continue to be underrepresented in politics.
Why is it, do you think?
Well, I don't know. And I guess that's why I said before that sometimes people are surprised when you talk about our community being the leader, you know, in some of these movements. And now we're not, you know, I don't know if people now think of us that way, think of Chautauqua County as having been so active in state and federal efforts. So, you know, we were the very first county in New York State to elect a woman for county clerk. And that was the year after women were given the right to vote.
Wow.
And so we elected the very first woman in New York State. We had the very first female attorney. The first woman to be admitted to the bar in New York State was from Busti.
What was her name, do you know?
Kate Stoneman.
Okay.
And she had to draft the legislation herself to allow, you know, and she did that because she was very active in the political equality movement, and she had been involved in the efforts to get women the right to vote in school board elections. And that happened in 1880 in New York State. So these women in Albany, she was a teacher at Albany Normal School. She was from Busti, and they were trying to get women. You know, here we are, women, you know, responsible for the children they were raising, and then they couldn't vote in any school issues. So they fought really hard to get that right, which happened in 1880. So that kind of gave her the ins and outs. She knew about how the Senate worked. And so she decided to take the bar exam, and she passed. And then they said, well,
Now what do you do with her?
we can't admit you to the bar because New York State law says, you know, any man who passes the bar can be admitted to practice law. Doesn't say any woman. So she had to petition to get that law changed so that she could be admitted. So that happened in 1886.
Just think of all the laws that were on the books that just said men.
Man.
You know, they had to go
Yeah.
back and change it all. Holy
Yeah.
mackerel.
And then the first female justice of the peace in New York State was from Poland.
Okay.
In Chautauqua County. So we had a lot of firsts as far as like women's rights and women really, you know, putting themselves out there to represent some faction of our local politics.
So Chautauqua County should stand proud with its history in this
Absolutely.
topic. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, we're running low on time here. Could you just give us a little glimpse about what these women had to go through? I mean, you said they were jailed. I mean, they were treated terribly, if I remember right.
Right, yeah, there was, you know, as many people that supported it, there were equal, you know, there were almost as many that were against it, and, you know, they were, at the time, there were some prominent professional men in the fields of medicine and psychology who said that they were insane. So women who were nonconformists could be institutionalized or, you know, imprisoned. So a lot of women, because a man, your father or your husband, could have you institutionalized if they felt you were, you know, whatever, not conforming to the ideal of the time. So some women were put into institutions, mental institutions, and so, you know, that was acceptable. That was considered to be a mental illness to want to have the right to vote. So yeah, so it was not. It was a hard fight.
So foreign to us today, isn't it?
Right.
Wow.
Right. So
Okay, we're down to the last minute. So how about one more time the event coming up on the 23rd?
sure. So September 23rd at the Bemis Point Methodist Church, 10 a.m. It's sponsored by the Chautauqua County Historical Society and the Bemis Point Historical Society. Dr. Shannon Risk and Dr. Tracy Langworthy will be speaking about women's suffrage in Western New York. It's free and open to the public. Love to have anybody and everyone who would like to join us be there.
And Bob Terryberry will be in
And Bob Terryberry and Kim Bentley will do short portrayals for us
Awesome.
too.
Okay, and I just realized I forgot one announcement. Next Saturday at Noble Winery, the Ripley Library Group will be putting on Murder on the Petulant Express, which is a play off of the Murder on the Orient Express. It's a murder mystery, and it's $15, and they have hors d'oeuvres and all that sort of thing. And I am playing Franz Fassbacher, the brewmaster from Germany. So, anyways, we'll see you all again next time right here on Chautauqua Sunrise. Michelle Bentley, Bentley is the, boy, that was a weird one. Michelle Henry has been my guest, our Chautauqua County historian, and I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to do this all again next week, 9 o'clock, right here on XS5. Have a great weekend. Get out there, enjoy the foliage and all that good stuff. Go pick an apple or a pear. Take care now. Bye-bye.